Kia ora and welcome to the Niggly Nishcast. I am the Diggity Doodah Doc, the Papatoe Panther, here to talk through all sorts of NRL, Kiwi NRL, rugby league matters. We have finals footy starting this weekend. I'm recording this prior to the teams being released for NRL Finals Week 1, and also that means we have the start of NRLW, Women's NRL, starting up to run in conjunction to or parallel to the Finals series. So later in the week I will roll through all those team lists from the NRL and the NRL Finals and NRLW, and I'll preview those from a Kiwi NRL perspective. Obviously, last weekend was the last round of regular season footy. We had the Warriors getting up over the Canberra Raiders, which was a nice way to finish the season, although it's hard to shake the fact that the Raiders, Ricky Stewart Raiders coach, did rest a whole bunch of players, so it was a good way to finish the season for the Warriors, but it doesn't change anything in terms of how we viewed their season overall. And that was kind of the vibe throughout the whole NRL this weekend. You had teams that were the like Titans versus Dragons. Who cares about that? And then teams who are either resting players at the top of the NRL ladder or are just too good for the teams who have already clocked out. So there isn't actually too much to talk about, so we'll keep this episode short and sweet. I do have a couple funky talking points to get through with regards to Morgan Harper making his debut for the Bulldogs, and also we had Starford To'a make his debut for the Newcastle Knights. So I'll just offer a bit of background information about them two, how they went, and offer a bit of insight on them too, and then I will touch on the West Tigers, who were the team who I missed out last week from a Kiwi NRL wrap perspective. So, and the Panthers, I think, as well. So we'll talk about the West Tigers and the Panthers and their Kiwi NRL crews, and that will be it. And then later in the week, I'll go through all the NRL team lists and the NRL women team lists and preview those from our Kiwi NRL perspective. Radio, the Bulldogs had Reimis Smith at centre and Morgan Harper at centre. Now, Morgan Harper had 12 runs for 117 metres, which is almost up around that 10 metre per run mark. He had a line break assist. He had not much else. And then defensively, he made 21 tackles and missed 6 tackles, which didn't end up being detrimental to his team's performance. But and to be fair, in your NRL debut, playing centre especially, like it's hard to be overly. It's hard to step into the NRL in your debut and do a great job at one of the hardest defensive positions in the game. So I'm not overly surprised or worried that Morgan Harper did miss 6 tackles. He made a lot of tackles. He made 21 tackles. Now, compare that to Reimis Smith. Reimis Smith only made 6 tackles. So you can tell where the Broncos sent their footy. And if Morgan Harper is making 21 tackles, I expect him to miss a fair few tackles in his debut game. So that's not overly surprised or cautious about what Reimis Smith did in that Bulldogs game in his debut. And you look at the missed tackle count for the Bulldogs, you had Corey Harawira-Naera also missing 6. You had a bunch of players missing 4 or 5 tackles. So Morgan Harper's defensive lapses weren't detrimental to the Bulldogs' performance, nor were they head and shoulders above any other Bulldogs missed tackle count. So we shouldn't be too concerned with that. Morgan Harper playing centre for the Bulldogs. Also Reimis Smith. Reimis Smith was pretty damn good for the Bulldogs at centre as well. He had 13 runs for 106 metres. He had a try. and 3 tackle busts and an offload as well, which is very good effort from Reimis Smith. This got me thinking, actually, and I'll bring it up now because when I was thinking about the West Tigers, I was thinking about the Isan Masters situation, which I did touch on last week, how there was one of the rumour hounds who, let's be honest, these rumour hounds are hit or miss. They're not exactly Woj in the NBA. Like, these dudes are, sometimes they're right, sometimes they're wrong, and oftentimes they're wrong. But there was this thing that came out about Isan Masters being slightly unhappy at the Tigers. He rebutted it on Twitter, and it was basically put to bed pretty quickly. But I was thinking about just Isan Masters, who let's have a look at his stats straight away, actually. He had 11 runs for 65 metres for the Tigers against the Sharks, the game that the Sharks won to go through to the finals. And somehow, like, Isan Masters, that's not a very efficient performance from Isan Masters, 65 metres from 11 runs, but he still has 4 tackle busts. He still has 3 offloads. Like, he's still having an impact. But this is a wider discussion about the Kiwis and who is available to play centre for Aotearoa. Because suddenly the Bulldogs have 2 centres, Reimis Smith and Morgan Harper, both of them who can also play wing. And I think if Reimis Smith is going to be included in a Kiwis squad later this year, in a month or so, he's probably going to make it as a winger. He spent all of this season playing on the wing, but Morgan Harper feels like a more specialist centre. So you had Joseph Manu, he's in fantastic form for the Roosters. So Joseph Manu on the right, Isan Masters on the left. That's the full-strength, top-tier Kiwi centre combination. Now you've got Morgan Harper also coming into the mix. Perhaps Reimis Smith coming into the mix. You've got the veteran Dean Whare, who has settled back into the Panthers team after a turbulent time with injury. He could work his way back into the Kiwis mixture if he feels that way inclined. And then you have other players like Perahiku, who has done a job at centre for the Kiwis previously. Jordan Kahu has played predominantly at centre for the Cowboys. And there's a bit of... Jordan Kahu rejected a contract offer from the Cowboys for an extension or a new deal. So it's just waiting to see what Jordan Kahu's going to get up to, whether he does in fact go back to rugby union or if there is another NRL club that would like his services. But he primarily plays at centre. So that's 3, 4, 5 maybe players who could play centre. Then you've got, in the lower ranks, you've got guys like Mawene Haroti, who's centre wing. You've got Stephen Masters, who has been playing centre all season long for the Dragons reserve grade team. You've got the Papatoi Rugby Union product, Connolly Lemelu. He is playing centre for the Bulldogs reserve grade team. You've got... I watched the Newtown Jets versus Mounties game on the weekend in reserve grade, and that had Jackson Ferris out of Palmerston North Boys High School. He was a junior Kiwi centre last year, and he's doing a great job for Newtown. He's signed to the Cronulla Sharks. So there's plenty of centre depth in the NRL right now, and there's also this young crop of players coming through who are going to bolster that depth moving forward. But in terms of Kiwis selection for any end of season footy, I definitely think Isan Masters and Joey Manu are your best centre pairing. And then Dean Whare is probably the steady option. He's probably the safest option to carry in a squad. And then I'd have Reimis Smith as part of that squad for experience, but he could play centre. And then the next best specialist centre could be someone like Morgan Harper. Forgive me if I'm missing someone. This is all coming straight off the top of the dome. But I do it's going to be interesting where Peter Hiku sits in all of this if he does get overtaken by these other centres. He's already been overtaken by Joey Manu. He's already been overtaken by Isan Masters, just like Dean Whare has been overtaken by those two. And it reminds me of like the halves or hooker position for the Kiwis, because when we were growing up in the late 90s, 2000 to 2010 range, you had guys filling in is the best way to say it. You had guys filling in, probably playing out of position. They were forwards, second row edge forwards who could play out in the centres. And just because the depth wasn't there, you had funky team selections. Whereas now we've got a good crop of specialist centres who Isan Masters and Joey Manu have already racked up a couple of games for the Kiwis. They've already looked at home. They've already got that relationship with Michael Maguire, so that's fantastic. And then below that, you've got the Dean Whares, you've got the Jordan Kahus, the Peter Hikus, and then the younger wave coming through as well. So it's very exciting. And it's just a interesting position centre. I've talked a lot about the centre wing, like where would you rather play in this day and age? The current version of rugby league, the current version of NRL footy. I'm not... It all depends on what sort of money you're after. I do think, though, that having Joey Manu, Isan Masters at centre with a sense of predictability or a sense of consistency in those squad selections, in those positions, is going to be a huge asset for the Kiwis moving forward, especially as I have this belief that centre is a really important defensive position. So Joey Manu plays for one of the best defensive teams in the NRL with the Roosters, so he's picking up good knowledge there. And then just the more footy they play, the combinations they build, if they can get consistency in terms of their combination with their edge forwards. So Kenny Bromwich, someone like him, someone like Tohu Harris, who has been out, spent a lot of time out injured this season. Whoever plays edge forward, if they can get a couple of games together, then suddenly that cohesion, that chemistry is far better, and that's going to help them in the international arena. So, but point here is that Morgan Harper is part of a clustered centre group. Now, I was just to offer a bit of background information about Morgan Harper. I talked about him being from Ngaruawahia, playing for Waikato, playing for Ngaruawahia men, playing for Waikato men, and enjoying a fair amount of success in those competitions and those teams. He went on to play for New Zealand. He made the New Zealand under-18 team. Now, he made that team in 2016, probably before he went to the Bulldogs, and he made that team as a winger. So as I said, he has played winger, spent a bit of time last year on the wing for reserve grade. In that 2016 New Zealand under-18 team, you also had Preston Rickey, who is now with the Warriors, playing reserve grade. And you also had Rory Ferguson starting at lock, who I talked about as going over to the Brisbane Broncos from the deep south of Aotearoa. And on the bench for that New Zealand under-18 team in 2016, you also had Wesley Vaikoso, who has played all season long for the Jersey Flegg Warriors. And if we're getting funky, I just scrolled up a bit and I've seen the New Zealand under-16 team from 2016. Same year, couple years younger though. And you've got Emmanuel Tuamavave-Gerard, who's the Warriors for Jersey Flegg fullback, KL Iro, who is the centre for the Jersey Flegg Warriors, and then you have Starford To'a, who made his debut for the Newcastle Knights. Now, Starford To'a is out of St. Paul's College in Auckland. He is listed as being a Richmond Rovers Akarana Junior. So he's obviously from the general wider central area of Auckland, and he made his debut for the Newcastle Knights on the wing. They got smoked by the Penrith Panthers 2 To'a did manage to score an intercept try for the Knights, and that was kind of impressive because he showed good speed. He actually gassed Jerome Luai, who played that game at centre, and Jerome Luai just looks as though he's fitting into the NRL nicely, and he should play in the halves next season with James Maloney leaving to go to the Super League. So that should present Jerome Luai with more opportunities, but I'll talk about that in the Panthers wrap coming up. But To'a did show good speed. He looks like a chunky dude. He looks fairly similar to Bradman Best, actually. Bradman Best is a bigger unit. He's more of a beastly figure. But Starford To'a does have the same shape as Bradman Best and is quick. He's nimble, powerful, and hopefully he can have a big off-season with the Knights and really build into that position on the wing for the Knights NRL team. Because I think Bradman Best will move into centre, and now you've got Sean Kenny-Dow. He's also leaving to the Super League, so there could be a couple of opportunities for young outside backs at the Knights. New coach obviously coming in, Adam O'Brien. So it'll be interesting to see what Starford To'a can do this summer after making his debut in the last round of the season. He was listed as a development player, but apparently injuries kept him out of the mix for much of this season, and then he only came back into contention late in the season. So he scored a try, 10 runs for 124 metres, which was boosted by that runaway try, 2 tackle busts, and actually ended up making a fair amount of tackles for a winger. 18 tackles on the wing for Starford To'a. Interesting there. So Starford To'a, let me just go back to that under-16 team. So he was selected on the wing for the New Zealand under-16s in 2016. His teammates in that team, one was Jordan Ricky, another South Islander who's gone to the Brisbane Broncos. So Jordan Ricky made the New Zealand under-16s 2016. Rory Ferguson made the New Zealand under-18s. Both of them went off to the Broncos. And then as an edge forward, you have Asu Kepaoa, who is now with the Roosters. He was an edge forward, New Zealand under-16s, 2016. And then also in that squad, you had Tyler Slade. Now with the Warriors, he was traditionally a middle forward, lock forward, and he's only moved into hooker on a somewhat permanent basis since coming into the Warriors reserve grade team. So those are the two debutants. It was a very exciting weekend. Morgan Harper got a little haka from his whānau with the Bulldogs, and there's good upside there with Morgan Harper at the Bulldogs. I'm very excited to see how he develops. And then also Starford To'a. He has made a significant impact at the Knights from all accounts, and he's commanded further opportunities with the Knights, which is rather exciting. And then it's just wait and see what happens with a new coach and how they view his talents. Rightio, we will just check in with the Tigers and Panthers. So the Panthers, as I said, Jerome Luai looks more comfortable in the NRL at this point. And you had the Bulldogs, Reimis Smith and Morgan Harper playing centre. And then you had Dean Whare and Jerome Luai playing centre for the Panthers. So 2 Kiwi NRL centres for the Bulldogs and Panthers. Jerome Luai played at centre and has been a utility player all season long for the Penrith Panthers. Couldn't really find a significant area to contribute. He's not a dummy half, naturally. He's more of a running number 6, I'd suggest. Very Benji Marshall-esque in what he offers. So that's a interesting player to keep an eye on next season, because I believe he'll get first crack in the halves, and that will be an exciting opportunity for Jerome Luai, who is currently a Samoan international. To be honest, I expect him to stick with Samoa and just help build them up ahead of the next World Cup and build those combinations with Mason Lino, Anthony Milford as well. So that's something to keep an eye on if you're a Uso out there in the world. Be excited about the Samoan playmakers, because I think things could even out between Samoa and Tonga over the next 12 to 18 months, considering the depth and options Samoa have in the playmaking positions. They don't have the forward pack that Tonga have, but they have the playmakers. Tonga don't have the playmakers. They've only got Tui Lolohea and Ata Hingano. Ata Hingano's playing reserve grade, Tui Lolohea's in Super League. Whereas Samoa at least have Jerome Luai, Mason Lino, Fa'amanu Brown, those type of characters. So keep it on Jerome Luai if you're a Samoan fan, if you are Samoan, because he should blossom next season with greater opportunities with the Penrith Panthers, and that's going to flow into how Samoa play their footy. Dean Whare, he just needs to play footy. Speaking of playing footy, Dean Whare needs to play footy because he's often injured and he's taken a bit of a dip. He's not renowned as one of the best centres in the NRL anymore. He's more of a... He's trying to work back into that, I'd suggest. But he did play a fair amount of footy this year, so hopefully he gets into a Kiwis squad and can kind of rise to that next level and just be there for the young centres like Isan Masters and Joey Manu and offer them support and help. And then the other big name for the Penrith Panthers was James Fisher-Harris, 80-minute middle forward. He did do a bit of a chopping, changing throughout the season between edge forward, middle forward, even starting at prop, starting at lock. But he's turned into an 80-minute middle forward, which is freakish, and I've talked about that a few times throughout the season. Big season for James Fisher-Harris, although, as I've also highlighted, the efficiency isn't quite there with James Fisher-Harris, which is what you'd expect for a young dude playing 80 minutes in the NRL. Like, it's going to be hard yakka. You're not going to have the same oomph with your runs if you're playing 80 minutes, are you? He had 17 runs for 139 metres versus the Newcastle Knights, which is nowhere near being efficient, and those are typical James Fisher-Harris numbers. But again, it's what you're offering your team and what your coach wants. If you're playing 80 minutes in the middle for an NRL team, you're not expected to get 10 metres per run, are you? No. You're a workhorse. You're doing your job for your team, so all good there. Not a hugely great, amazing season for Sione Katoa. He struggled to stay in the NRL, which is a bit of a concern, and the Penrith Panthers simply have better options at dummy half. Wade Egan's the best by the looks of things, and then Sione Katoa, you just don't know where he's going to fit in with that Panthers team. He doesn't really run the footy, he's not fast, he's not overly skillful. He does have a decent kicking game, he can be a solid dummy half, and it's simply up to Sione Katoa from Wellington, what he does over the summer and how he plays his way back into that Panthers top 17, and he's barely even like the best hooker for Tonga. They got Saliva Havili and they got Manasi Fainu. So Sione Katoa is falling backwards in the Tongan pecking order as well. That's the Panthers. Speaking of Tonga, that situation's interesting, isn't it? It's not a great... I just think back to the issues that Samoa have had, and just as everything was looking honka-dory for Tonga, administration issues again come to the fore. Now, these aren't like incompetence issues, which I think if you are going to go down a kind of stereotypical racial line of thinking about Samoa, Tonga, Polynesian, Pacific Island administration, if you are going to fall back on a lazy stereotype, you would say incompetence. Whereas this just looks to be greed. It just looks to be greedy from the board. And it's the same stuff that we've seen with Samoa at recent World Cups, whether rugby league, rugby union. Anyone in administration roles for those type of organizations, they just see the money and their eyes light up and they go, oh yes, this is for me, yeah. And they don't think about the betterment of the sport. They don't think about who's actually providing that money to come in. It's the players. And then what to do with that money to help support the code, the sport in that country at the grassroots level. So big shout out to the Tongan players for making a stand and voicing their concerns. But it's covering these sports for a while now. It's something that isn't new. And that's the biggest issue here. But often the players are either they don't quite care enough because you can go play NRL. If you're a rugby union player, you can go to Europe and just earn a comfortable living wage and not have to deal with the Samoan rugby union. In the past. I don't know about right now. So, you don't need to make a stand like the Tongan players are, but they're standing up for what they believe in and what they want for the betterment of Tongan Rugby League, which is admirable. It puts them in a spot of bother because, let's be honest, the Kiwis probably won't welcome them back with open arms. Australia won't welcome them back with open arms, but I don't expect that to even happen. I view those as the leverage for the players. Those are the leverage points for the players to make their stand, or else we try and go back to those other countries. I don't think it would even get to that point. But again, those are what they're saying, what they're using to help make their stand. So shout out to them. Shout out to all the Tongan players standing up for what they believe in, standing up for what they want to happen, and hopefully we do get some resolution to that situation. Rightio, West Tigers. Ben Matalina and Russell Packer are sizzling out of the NRL. Let's start there. Things didn't really go well with the departure of Ivan Cleary. The arrival of Michael Maguire hasn't gone so well for Russell Packer, and I think Ben Matalino's injured. Issa Masters hasn't quite been as consistently amazing as he was last season, but he's going to be far more heavily marked this season. There was that talk about him getting less footy on the left. He did play right centre last year. I just view him as a typical, it's not his second year, but they're kind of, now you're just closely marked. You're an international centre, and it's easier to shut down a centre than other positions. Because you're just getting the footy shoveled out to you out on an edge, and it's what are you going to do with it? Well, there's two dudes on me right now, so what do you want me to do with it? It's a bit of a tricky, it's hard to have that same impact when you are getting defences sliding across to cover your strengths and try and expose your weaknesses. So, but Easton Masters just kept toiling away. He's going to be starting centre for the Kiwis unless there is some sort of drama with Michael Maguire. So, just a solid season for Easton Masters. He doesn't have the team around him that Joey Manu does. Joey Manu doesn't have that. Again, it's not his second year, but it is his second year of playing full season at centre. So teams are going to be better defensively prepared for Joey Manu, but Joey Manu he's got Latrell Mitchell on the other edge. He's got Cooper Cronk, Luke Keary, James Tedesco, let alone the forward pack steaming their way through the middle, let alone Angus Crichton bursting onto a short pass on that right edge, or whoever else it is. So it's harder for opposition teams to put a defensive focus on Joey Manu because that defensive focus takes away from other areas of the Roosters team. So hence Joey Manu can still be highly effective. Issa Masters doesn't have that luxury. Great season for Benji Marshall. Looks amazing. Looks like basically just is playing rugby league like Ross Taylor plays cricket in these post 30 years of age. dominant, world class. Love Benji Marshall. Michael Cheekham's had a massive impact coming off the bench. Is a versatile option, first and foremost, in the NRL. Having someone who can play centre or edge forward or middle forward on your bench is a huge asset. So it's good for Michael Cheekham. And we've seen how robust, how dynamic, how mobile, nimble he is at various points this season. And he should play a lot more footy for Samoa if he does want to play for Samoa. Or he could wiggle into a Kiwis squad. I can see that happening, just his versatility. But primarily, I think he will do a great job for Samoa. Another player for Samoa is Josh Alloway, who finished the season out injured, I believe. And he's someone who, had he kept playing solid footy all season, he could have worked his way into the Kiwis mix. And I've got Josh Alloway, not quite as impactful as Braden Hamlin-Uele, but they are the epitome, along with Marata and Niukore, they are that young Kiwi forward coming through. So the next wave of Kiwi forwards is going to be fantastic. I'm so excited to see Hamlin-Uele playing for the Kiwis. I'm so excited to see Marata Niukore playing for the Kiwis. And if Josh Alloway does, because he is already a Samoan international, he could play for Samoa, or he could go for Kiwis, whatever it is. I'm just excited to see him play more footy. I do believe Braden Hamlin-Uele is Samoan as well, so he could be make an appearance for Samoa in the near future. And then you got Elijah Taylor, who had a resurgent year with the Tigers. Started off a bit up and down, played a bit of dummy half, as well as starting at lock, and now he's settled into a bench role where he's turning out to be a bit of a powerhouse. So it's quite interesting seeing the resurgence of Elijah Taylor. Against the Sharks, he played 44 minutes, 12 runs for 108 metres, tackle bust, 34 tackles, no missed tackles. Beautiful. Great work from Elijah Taylor. And I imagine he'll stay with the Tigers, and he does offer a point of difference in that Tigers forward pack because all those dudes are quite big. Ryan Madison, he's a big unit. Thomas Mikaele, big unit. Matt Eisenhuth, big unit. Alex Twal, he's a bigger. These dudes aren't massive, but they just don't have the ability to move around the ruck area, move around the field and pass like Elijah Taylor does. So he's a bit unique in that Tigers forward pack, and he's had a good season for the Tigers. So beautiful stuff. Panthers, Tigers, didn't quite make the top 8 this season. Should give it a good crack next season, and if either of those teams do have strong seasons next season, it will be on the back of strong Kiwi NRL contributions, which is always great. That's it for this week, for this first episode of the week. I'll be back later in the week to talk through the preview of Finals Week 1 in the NRL and NRL Women. Yeah. Beautiful. Kia, stay beautiful, and I'll see you in a couple of days. Cheer.